Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, not knowing can be the scariest thing of all, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do because you're listening right now. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can give us the old like and subscribe, the 5-star rating at your favorite service. We're at Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, basically wherever you get your podcasts. So please sign up, and also don't forget that we also archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. You can find us where else? At In the Seats. We are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram, and you can check it out for all sorts of fun updates from the world of the moving image at large. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a fun one. It is on video on demand now, and it is a unique little horror thriller called Escape the Field. And it is the tale of 6 strangers who awake in this remote and endless cornfield, not knowing how they got there, and they're stripped of all their possessions, but have been left with only 6 items: a gun with 1 bullet, matches, a lantern, a knife, a compass, and a flask of water. As the tension rises and mysterious sirens blare in the distance and traps appear no matter which way they turn, this group realizes that they've been thrust into a sick cat-and-mouse game with an unseen evil, and their survival really depends on solving this puzzle, which is both diabolical and deadly. This comes from the mind of co-screenwriter and director Mr. Emerson Moore, and it's a fun one. I really enjoyed it, and it's, like I said, it is on video on demand platforms now from our friends over at Lionsgate's Home Entertainment, and we had the pleasure of sitting down with Emerson, talking about just sort of how he came up with the idea, shooting in the middle of COVID, and shooting in Ontario, which we're always happy with because that's where we are. But it's a fun little film if you want something like a little locked-in thriller. It's definitely worth your time on all video-on-demand platforms, but what's even more worth your time is our talk with Emerson right now, and between you and me, it's a good one.
All right. Well, I mean, first off, man, just thank you so much for the time today. I appreciate this.
Yeah, no problem, Dave. How's everything?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
No, I mean, first off, man, congrats on the film, man. It's a hell of a flick. Like, walk me through sort of the origin of the story on your end.
Wow, that's a good one. Started writing on this, a few years back, and we were heading into production and getting things ready, and the pandemic happened, and that definitely threw a big curveball at what we're doing, where we're going, how's this going to happen? And quite honestly, I was signed off. I was like, well, this isn't happening. And then the stars aligned and a window opened up outside Toronto. We found a cornfield and just cobbled it together and made it work. And lucky us, we ended up with such a great cast, and the stars aligned and we got to make our film.
What is it about the cornfield that is just, I don't know, man. It's so nebulous. It's so scary. Like, there's something about it that like, it's so simple, but it's so terrifying all at the same time. Like, why do you think it works so well?
It's an interesting thing. I have memories when I was young, being in a cornfield, goofing around with friends at night or something like that out at my cousin's. But it really, you understood it once you got to set, and we had created these different sets, everything's all inside of one giant cornfield. So yeah. I had drawn maps of where we were shooting each day, and we would just go out into the field in these different areas. But when we started shifting into nights, it was already kind of creepy during the day. When we shifted into nights, and I took the cast and we just walked out into the middle of the field, like 300-400 yards away from everything, and just stopped it's just scary. It's just something about it. There's no other way to put it. It's just naturally kind of a sketchy environment. So
no, I mean, walk me through your casting process, because I mean, obviously, well, there's a few moments as the film builds. The bulk of the tension has to be built up with the dialogue. But I mean, if you're not going to have the right people to do it, it's not going to work. Like, walk me through finding the people that you needed to find.
It was it was such a fun process and very different from anything that I've ever been used to on other films, that I've produced or worked on or supervised or managed or whatever. It was very kind of, there were a number of boxes you had to hit. Like, were these actors comfortable traveling at this time? What was the quarantine factor? What was the airline factor? And, it was literally almost like a game of craps getting people to Canada and on set. But thankfully it all worked out. And, there was a lot of Zoom calls during casting and kind of getting an idea of, gauging their reaction not in person is very different than, a typical casting session in front of people. So for the response that I got from the actors that came on board with Shane and Theo and Jordan and Tahira, Julian, Elena, I just got lucky. They all loved the script, loved the concept, loved the idea. And, as a director, it was kind of nice because there was a required 2-week quarantine. So I was guaranteed some rehearsal time. So that was really nice. They couldn't get away. So it was like, hey, let's go downstairs and rehearse. And nobody had anything else to do. So that's what we got to do. So it was a lot of fun. So I really got to plan things out and spend time with it.
This film throws out so many ideas, and I mean, obviously I don't want to spoil anything for anybody listening, but it's really fascinating just to see inside the space, being able to play with the tensions and the back and forth with the characters. And I mean, I'm kind of curious from your perspective, what is it about sort of like the horror thriller kind of motif that allows for such freedom, really? Because it's not necessarily a straight ahead movie. There's zigs and zags along the way that are a lot of fun.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's I tried to kind of follow a path that gave us a little bit more. And if you pay attention and listen, that's the key when you're watching the film.
No, for sure, yeah.
You'll get the answers that you want. You just have to kind of look for them. I think if you're paying attention to what they're doing, I'm trying to be really careful how I say this without giving it away. But if you pay attention to what they're doing and listen to what the characters are saying, especially during conflict, you'll get a really good idea of what this is all about. So, I've always been drawn to films that have a bit of a mystery around them, a thriller. So, I mean, that goes back to, just early films that I've seen, Dressed to Kill, or Rosemary's Baby I remember seeing, or and then the horror films that I saw, some of the first ones I remember I think was Phantasm. So there were all these different elements there that you pull together, but the mystery aspect is the key. The puzzle might be the main thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, sort of at the end of I can imagine, because this is your first feature, you didn't anticipate probably having to do ADR and post over Zoom, but I mean, how was that experience, sort of cobbling together your first picture, but not necessarily being able to be in the same room with a lot of the people who helped you make it?
Yeah, there were some challenging aspects. As with, principal, I got really lucky with little pockets. So when it was time to do mix and color, I jumped on a plane and went to London and finished the film there, because we had a window, it was open, and I got to be in the room. I did do a number of remote sessions for some ADR, but surprisingly there wasn't a ton. There was very little. It was easy to knock out. And I was lucky to have a few actors in town here. So it wasn't too rough, believe it or not. I didn't get bit with the remote bug. So,
well, that's good. It's, I mean, I've done a few interviews, and I mean, I've heard some horror stories of people in post over Zoom. I don't think it's been a fun experience for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. There is that, and my background's in post, so I have a lot of experience in post. So, I kind of knew what was coming, and we worked with a great team and had a shorthand, so it really worked out. It worked out well.
No, I mean, I guess this is my next question because, I mean, what made you want to jump from post to sort of being the storyteller and working behind the camera? Because I mean, I'm always kind of fascinated of sort of was like being a director always sort of the mission for you, or like how did you evolve into this spot?
Yeah, I was, I'd finished up school, came back to LA, and was working at a number of production companies, Cognito Films. I was at Original Film for a while, and then I had started a company with a friend of mine. So that kind of sidetracked me for a couple of years. Then when that finished up, my daughter was born, and I didn't want to travel. And I'd actually just produced one of the first films that shot on Red. So I was right there in the room for the, metaphorically, when the digital workflow was developed. So I had a knowledge set that was valuable in town at the time, is the easiest way to put it. So I wanted to stay, in town and not be gone for a huge number of months at a time. So it worked out well for me. I wrote during that whole time period, worked with a ton of directors and met a lot of people, handling post on a number of films. So it was nice, kind of shepherded in the digital era, if you will, around town. So, it was an easy transition for me. I had already been down those paths, and then just kind of came back to the path that I wanted to be on.
No, I mean, I guess that leads to the next question. What were the movies that sort of made a young Emerson want to be a filmmaker?
Oh man, there's so many. I mean, those just come on. I think I'd mentioned a few earlier.
Yeah.
Conversation. I remember at a young age through my dad seeing, like Knife in the Water, which was Polanski's first film, and it was so amazing to me how much tension was there just between three people on a sailboat.
Yeah.
It's a single action, three people, and it's just an amazing film that you can't get away from. So, that caught my attention. Obviously, that turned on to Rosemary's Baby and subsequent pictures, The Exorcist, The Shining, Dress to Kill. The list goes on. I think I'd seen Phantasm when I was really young. And that one just was.
Didn't we all see Phantasm when we were just a little too young?
Yeah, and then other stuff that just makes it fun. Whether it's like Ramis's Animal House or Jaws. All these films just kept coming, and that was the end of it. Once I saw that, I knew where I was going, and I found a way to get on set at an early age. Like I remember being an extra and like some 80s films and things like this, and just sneaking on with friends and doing all the things that someone that grows up in this area does, I would imagine. But yeah, those are really, the main ones that kind of caught me. Alien, gosh, I mean, who doesn't love that film, and the sub films that came from that. But that first one is, there's a lot of similarities there that drew me to doing something like this to start off directing, a small group of people caught somewhere.
No, so. And I mean, a lot of that comes up, and I mean, it's just one of those films that, I mean, like I said, I like. It feels like it harkens back to Polanski or Pakula, or like some of those like really sort of intense thrillers that just sort of get you twisted in knots that you absolutely love. And I mean, it's nice to talk to someone as well who can appreciate that. There's a sweet spot of youngness where you need to be in to be able to appreciate the big silver ball of death running through the halls trying to kill people.
Man. What?
If you're a little too old, it doesn't work. But there's like a sweet spot where it's just perfect.
Yeah. I mean, but don't be confused. I love, like, if you go back and look at what, it's just amazing that it's been that long. But you look at stuff like The Ring. I mean, it's just epic.
No, Gore did a great job with it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Gore did do a great job with that movie, and it does something more, and it's what I'm really drawn to, and hopefully you picked up on it in this film, is the visual storytelling aspect. It's what you can do with just image. If you can follow the story with the sound turned off, That's your first step, in my opinion. And then follow it up with the other half of the equation, which is how it sounds, what your music is doing, what your score is doing. So I think those two things, you look at the visual storytelling from Gore, you look at that from like Conjuring, it's all right there. And, there's some fantastic filmmakers out there today, just as there are, that I think, well, I know they're drawing from these same pools for sure. When you watch The Conjuring, it might as well be 1978.
Oh no, for sure, exactly.
Yeah.
No, and you know what, man? I mean, I think you've added your name to that pool, because I mean, this film, it's a 90-minute ride, man. It's a 90-minute immersive, scary ride, and I mean, I absolutely loved it. And I mean, just, you know what? Congrats on the work, and thank you so much for the time today, man. This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.